Off the coast of a quiet bay, a young orca wouldn't leave a tourist boat alone. He circled it for 30 minutes straight, crying, wailing, ramming his body gently against the hull. Nobody on board had ever heard a sound like that come out of an animal. And nobody could figure out what he wanted. Sarah had been on plenty of whale-watching trips. She knew orcas were curious. She knew they approached boats sometimes. But the second she looked over that railing and met his eye, she stopped thinking about any of that. Because what she saw wasn't curiosity. It was panic. The morning had started like nothing. Flat water, gray sky, coffee going cold in her hand. Sarah was standing at the rail of the tourist vessel scanning the northern outcroppings out of habit more than hope when the orca just appeared. No fin on the horizon first, no warning. One moment open water, the next a black and white shape rising 10 feet off the side of the boat, releasing a sound that silenced every conversation on deck instantly. Low, broken, wrong. He was young, that much was obvious. Smaller than the adults she'd seen in photos. He started circling immediately. Tight, urgent laps around the hull, surfacing every few seconds to cry out again. Someone on the boat laughed, the nervous kind. Someone else held up their phone. Most people just stood still. Sarah leaned further over the rail and looked harder at him. She'd seen that expression before. Not on an animal, on people. In waiting rooms. On the other end of bad phone calls. The face of someone who has run completely out of road. She picked up her phone and called for help. The captain tried pulling away. The orca followed. He killed the engine. The orca circled wider, then came straight back, louder. For half an hour this went on, the boat drifting, the passengers getting quietly more nervous, and this juvenile orca absolutely refusing to give up on whatever he was trying to communicate. Sarah didn't wait for the rescue team to arrive before she acted. She leaned over the railing, stretched her arm out low over the water, and held her hand just above the surface. The orca slowed, came closer, rose until her palm rested against the side of his head, that smooth, strange skin, cold from the deep water. He went quiet, just like that. The crying stopped. The frantic circles stopped. He floated there beside her hand and breathed, and Sarah talked to him in the steadiest voice she could manage. She told him help was coming. She told him people who knew what they were doing were on their way. She had no idea if that would be enough. She didn't even fully know what she was promising. But she kept talking, and he kept listening, and that was all either of them could do. Marco and Dennis had worked marine rescues for a combined 30-something years. Dolphins, sea turtles, beached whales, they'd handled most of it. They pulled up in their inflatable and immediately noticed something was off. The juvenile didn't circle their boat the way he'd circled Sarah's. He came straight to them, made one loop almost like he was sizing them up, and then turned and started swimming away. Then stopped, then looked back. Dennis said it first. He wants us to follow. Marco had been in this work long enough to trust that kind of red. He gave the nod, and they went. The orca led them through a narrow channel between two rock formations, around a stretch of coastline that wasn't on any tourist route, into a sheltered cove, where the water darkened, and the sound of the open bay disappeared. He stayed just far enough ahead to be followed. Never so close they'd clip him with the engine. It wasn't frantic anymore. It was deliberate. And then they saw her. She was floating at the surface. Not swimming, not diving, just there, barely moving, her body rising and falling with the swell like something already half gone. The mother. 3 or 4 younger orcas were pressed against her sides, holding her up from beneath the waterline. They'd been doing that for hours, Marco guessed. Maybe longer. Long enough that the muscles in their small bodies must have been burning. The juvenile crossed the cove in seconds and went straight to her side. His vocalizations changed the moment he got there. Still urgent, but softer, relieved, almost. Like he was saying, I found them. Marco leaned over the hull and saw it right away. A fishing rope, thick commercial-grade line, coiled and wound through her tail fluke and into the lower body. It had been there long enough to cut into the skin. The wounds underneath were open and raw. She hadn't been able to swim properly in days, which meant she hadn't been able to hunt, which meant she was starving on top of everything else. Her family had formed a circle around her and kept her breathing while her eldest son swam out into the open ocean to find something, anything, that might be able to fix what they couldn't. He found a tourist boat. He found Sarah. Marco grabbed the cutting shears and came alongside her. Here's the thing about a healthy adult orca. She could have ended that rescue in about 3 seconds if she'd wanted to. Apex predator, 6 tons, open water. Instead, she went completely still. No thrashing, no dive. She held position alongside the inflatable and let him work. The juvenile stayed close the whole time, watching. The rope was thick and the angle was bad, and it took several long minutes of careful cutting before the last section finally dropped free into the water. When it did, the mother orca exhaled a long, slow breath through her blowhole that Dennis later described as the most human sound he'd ever heard an animal make. Then she dove and was gone. Her family went with her, the juvenile last of all. He paused at the surface for just a second, looked back at the 2 men in the boat, and disappeared. Marco and Dennis sat there for a moment, in the sudden quiet. Then they turned around and started heading back. They were most of the way to shore when the Finns reappeared. All of them, mother included, surfacing in a line off the port side of the rescue boat, keeping pace exactly, not playing, not breaching, just swimming alongside, steady and close, all the way to the shallows. Neither man said a word. There was nothing to say. And then, just as the shoreline came into view, the mother surfaced one last time. She had a fish in her mouth, fresh caught. She dived on a body that was still injured and still weak from days without food, and she'd hunted, and she'd come back up beside their boat and held it there. Dennis looked at Marco, a long pause. Then he slowly reached out and took it. There are 150 million tons of fishing gear loose in the world's oceans right now. Rope, line, net equipment that keeps killing long after anyone has forgotten it was ever there. By 2050, scientists estimate there could be more debris in the water than fish. That morning, in a hidden cove, a young orca ran out of options and made a decision that shouldn't have worked. He found a stranger on a boat, convinced her to call for help, and then led 2 persons through unfamiliar water to his mother.